Extra, extra! It's Canonically Crumb News, your number one source for fast-breaking Crummyverse news. Boy, what a scoop, Crumbums!
Crumbums?
Okay, I know I'm a week or so late with this bit of our Crumb news, but this episode is kind of proof of concept for a Canonically Crumb supplemental news series. And who knows when the next opportunity will strike, so I'm going to just keep on trucking with the episode. If, like me, you're also a pathetic nerd suffering from arrested development, and you still watch children's cartoon shows, then you've probably seen Disney's recent satirical reboot of Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers. This ironic take on the Chipmunks places them in a Roger Rabbit-esque world, where toons and people coexist side by side, and where animated films are just regular films that feature real-life animated characters. And like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, the new Rescue Ranger verse features cartoon characters from throughout the history of cartoons and animation, including a man from Afghanistan who you might just recognize.
Sometimes when I'm low on cash, I sell my fur to that wig shop.
Hey, far out.
Lampooning cartoon characters has a long and rich history, including, notably, a magazine that I've been published in, the much-beloved Mad Magazine, as well as less notably, the much-reviled Cracked Magazine. Now, traditionally, when Mad and Cracked would directly parody a character, their real name would never be used, and elements would be changed or exaggerated about the character to satirize something about it. For example, in South Park, which also gets a character cameo in the Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers movie, when they spoof Mickey Mouse, the character isn't directly referred to by name. He wears different clothes than the real Mickey Mouse, and he's invoked in a critique of Disney as a sort of stand-in for the corporation itself. But Disney isn't really doing that here, are they? They're just showing Mr.Natural and saying, yeah, he exists in this world that we happen to own too. His name is even listed in the voice acting credits. When Spielberg used both Warner Brothers and Disney characters in his film adaptation of Who Censored Roger Rabbit, it took some serious negotiation. Neither company's major characters could have more screen time than the others. Which is why, consequently, Daffy and Donald appear together in the dueling piano scene, and why Mickey Mouse and Bugs Bunny share some screen time as well. Even though that's ridiculous, Bugs Bunny would never hang out with a square like Mickey Mouse. The deal didn't extend to secondary media like comics, which majorly suffered from being only able to use the Roger Rabbit-specific characters. And of course, all of the copyright owner's trademark information was clearly acknowledged in the credits of the film. But in Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, Crumb's copyright is conspicuously absent. Now, Underground Comics have a history of parodying Disney, and Disney has sought litigation in the past, notably filing suit and winning against Dan O'Neill and the Air Pirates over their comics in which Mickey and Minnie Mouse use drugs and engage in explicit sex acts. Certainly, some people believe Crumb licensed the character to Disney for this film. And the truth is, I don't know. There doesn't seem to be any information either way at this point. Crumb has certainly been outspoken in the past, insisting that he'd never lend his characters to the animation industry again after the Fritz the Cat movie, which we talked about in Canonically Crumb number 6. Link in the show description. And some people are quick to assume that any kind of Disney deal must be so lucrative that nobody would ever refuse them.
Oh! They drove a dump truck full of money up to my house. I'm not made of stone.
I've seen comments that suggest that perhaps Crumb badly needed money, and even ones that assume that since his characters are morally and ethically dubious, that he must be too. But it's hard to imagine that a guy whose placemat doodles sell for several $1,000s, who traded some sketchbooks for a villa in France, and whose original comic art has sold at auction for over $700,000 in just the past few years, would really be that hard up for cash. In the past, even when he did need the money, Crumb has refused to compromise his artistic integrity. After the popularity of his famous artwork for Big Brother and the Holding Company's album Cheap Thrills in 1967, he turned down a lucrative offer to do a Rolling Stones cover just because he hated the music. And in 2004, he turned out an offer from Toyota, reported to be between $100,000 and I think exaggeratedly millions of dollars, to license his ubiquitous Keep On Truckin' artwork. As well, he's very diligent with his copyright acknowledgement, ever since his much bootlegged Keep On Trucking artwork fell temporarily into the public domain when the same judge that ruled in favor of Disney in the Air Pirates case decided that under the 1909 Copyright Act, the fact that his publisher had the image on his business card without a copyright notice voided Crumb's intellectual property rights, a decision that was eventually reversed in 1977. So, for example, when Roger Green, who legally changed his name to Mr.Natural, asked for permission to use Mr.Natural artwork for his small San Francisco music teaching business, the response was this.
Permission granted to use the graphics by me of Mr. Natural. Just put the 2005 copyright R. Crumb in small lettering somewhere near the artwork. It's strange that you actually changed your name to Mr. Natural. Is that official? I mean, is that the name on your legal identity, like your driver's license or your tax returns? I wonder how that has affected your destiny using that name. Well, I've got a lot to say about that.
Many people online assume that Disney, such a huge megacorporation, must possess a cyclopean legal bureaucracy so meticulously thorough that no intellectual property could ever appear without ironclad contracts for every conceivable contingency. Director Akiva Schaffer has even said this.
Big thank you to the Disney legal team, non-ironically, non-sarcastic. Yeah. Like, they embraced the challenge, and honestly, the Disney legal team, is owed a huge amount of gratitude from me, because it wasn't easy. We have to pitch them the whole movie, and we have to show them where it'll fit in. It's a whole show, and then can we use it in an ad? Every detail has to be worked out, and that's for just one character in one shot. And then the ones that we couldn't get the rights to, whether they were Disney or non-Disney, there were some that Disney was like, actually don't use that character. And there's some that we reach out to the people and they're like, no, thank you. And so, some of them just came back yes, and it was so easy, but still legal has a huge thing to do. Even in the event of an easy yes, the contracts and the details, it was a huge, I think it took more of their time probably than all their other movies put together. That's my guess.
Yeah.
But legal departments aren't just for determining what's legal. They're for determining what you can get away with and doing a cost-benefit analysis of engaging in legal ambiguity. Fair use in satire is an extremely effective legal shield, and Crumb's operation, for all his fame and fortune, is just a small family business. Disney's legal department might have figured that you can't get a no if you don't ask, and any legal challenge might go something like this.
We've got witnesses, precedent, and a paper trail a mile long.
Yes, well, I have 10 high-priced lawyers.
One could ask, if he didn't give permission, does it really hurt Crumb in any way to have his character used like this? What are the damages? Well, it's a speaking role, albeit a small one, and clearly other characters like He-Man and Skeletor were explicitly licensed, presumably for money. So in that sense, he's at least deserving of equivalent remuneration. Also, through its use, Disney undermines public awareness of Crumb's ownership of the character, especially by using him in this way without any copyright or trademark information. Since Disney's branding initiatives include creating a shared cinematic universe as a central pillar of the Disney experience, it's reasonable for people to assume that he gave permission or sold the character outright, even if he didn't. And clearly people do think that, despite there being no evidence one way or the other. The perception that Crumb's work is in the public domain, aided by the fact that it actually was in the public domain for a while, has led to it being appropriated by big companies like Amazon, which Crumb sued in 2005. And after Keep On Truckin', Crumb's second most bootlegged image is probably just Mr. Natural walking, which he sells through his official website, so there's a clear financial interest in public awareness of his intellectual property rights. Would Crumb take legal action against Disney if Mr. Natural was used without permission? Who knows? As I mentioned, it's very hard to argue against fair use in satire. But then again, they didn't really satirize the character at all. Compare this to their use of Batman. That character appears once removed from the Rescue Ranger-verse, being in a movie within the movie that's both a satire of the Batman vs. Superman film, but also the character and the way that he behaves. What's the joke with Mr. Natural? That he's bald and sells wigs? He's not even wearing a wig. The real joke is just that Mr. Natural is in a Disney movie. And is that really satire? But what's the big deal? It's only a couple of seconds and it's all good fun. Mr. Natural and Crumb references in general have appeared in other media and nobody cared, right?
Look, Mr. Natural, right? I'm not going to let you sabotage this thing. This guy is not going to take you if you show up high. So stop screwing around or it's both our asses.
Well, to me, in any argument where the brevity of the appearance in a broadly satirical film nullifies any claim of infringement, the scale of the scene needs to be weighed alongside the scale of the company using the character. Disney is a globe-bestriding hegemon that basically owns half of the characters in the Western cultural canon, and they should be maximally scrutinized at all times. Like I said, we don't know if Crumb gave permission or not. Based on what I've presented here, I suspect he didn't. But, you know, I'm prejudiced in this situation. As fans of my live stream, the Nostril Zone, where we listen to tunes and draw cartoons every Sunday from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Central, certainly know that I'm largely radicalized against contemporary copyright laws. In part, this is due to having so many streams shut down for background music recorded by exploited people of color who were underpaid for their songs even by the standards of 90 years ago, and who had no way of knowing that their songs would continue to be monopolized and kept from the public domain to this day by what were then yet to exist unimaginably large megacorporations. And that's precisely because of lobbying to extend the copyright on Mickey Mouse, which has had the effect of robbing us all of our collective cultural heritage that by all rights should have been in the public domain 25 years ago. But at the end of the day, it comes down to whatever degree you personally trust the Disney Corporation, which for me is not very much. Well, Crumb Bums, this marks the end of the inaugural episode of Canonically Crumb News. Copyright Little Cozy Nostril Enterprises, all intergalactic rights reserved, 2022 in the Common Era. If you like this program, remember to hit like, hit subscribe, be a ding-dong daddy, and ding that bell. I've been your host, Kyle Bridgett. You can find my links in the show description, and if you want to support this show and myself, you'll also find my Patreon in the show description as well. Canonically Crumb will be back as weekly as possible with another deep dive into the Crummyverse. Thanks again, Crumb Bums, and keep on bopping.